Bad Monkey is Apple TV's latest series to be released on the platform, and the first 2 episodes have just arrived. Starring Vince Vaughn as a suspended police detective called Andrew Yancey, we saw him getting drawn into a case which was centered around an arm being found in the Atlantic Ocean, which raised a lot of suspicions about how it could have happened. With this being a detective drama sprinkled with comedy, the balance of that is something that's at the heart of the show. So, what did these first 2 episodes tell us exactly, and does it seem like the show is gonna be worth sticking with? Well, let's get into it. Here is Bad Monkey episodes 1 and 2, Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The Ending Explained. In terms of the first 2 episodes, right at the end, we saw that both of the stories that the captain was narrating to us ended up colliding as Andrew Yancey entered the restaurant that Neville Stafford was working at, showing that the similar traits that they already had were going to be coinciding even more, as their connection to Christopher was most likely going to bring them closer. We know that the curse that Neville put upon Christopher due to the fact that he was the property developer and he destroyed his home was one that was going to take a while, and it wasn't going to be quick, and it meant that death could be the very thing that might end up finding him as part of that curse. Maybe Yancey is going to be involved in that death in some kind of way. There's a reason that both of their paths have crossed, and I can't help but feel as though it's because of the connection to the curse and the role that they're both going to play. Both Neville and Yancey have a kind heart, and they care about the preservation of the area in which they're from, even though it's different. We saw this with the fact that Neville didn't want to give up his home and also felt anger towards the property developer for turning it into a tourist resort. And we saw the same with Yancey when he rescued the baby deer, cared about the lights for the turtles as they navigated, and also the annoyance at the house that had been built outside of its restrictions right next to him. Yancey has a couple of different stories going on at the moment. The first is obviously the case of Nick's arm and the finding out of who was responsible for it, although it does seem as though even Christopher are probably the killers. There's also the fact that he's looking to get his job back as a homicide detective, but the more he delves into the case of Nick, the higher the chances he's not going to get it back. We've got the love story that he has with Bonnie, although we found out that she was living a secret life due to the fact that she was in hiding and on the run for being inappropriate with a student when she was a teacher at a school. The case of the murder of Finney, and also the spark that seems to be igniting between himself and Dr. Rosa. It sounds like a lot, doesn't it? And right now, it is. But I think everything is most likely going to be connected in some way, and all roads are probably going to lead back to Christopher. Other than the story that's going on with Bonnie, I think that's a whole separate thing that he's going to have to navigate. Within the Bahamas, we saw that Egg went after Charles following him taking the money from the cash register due to him being owed it. And with him entering the house and saying that it was too late to give the money back, there might be another body that ends up being investigated. It seems like corruption is at the core of this show, whether that be from the police force and the people, and its impact on not only the lives of the residents, but the land, wildlife, and animals that have been there for many years. This is why I feel there's probably a strong spiritual connection that's within the show with regards to the Dragon Queen, and there's also been a heavy focus on the land in the Bahamas being destroyed, and Andrew's home not resembling the place that it once was, considering that it was his favourite spot in the world. There was a moment where the sheriff mentioned how the higher-ups in the police force were well connected, and that was the reason as to why Yancey wasn't given his job back immediately. So I wonder if he was put as a restaurant inspector because they could be involved or connected to Christopher in some way, maybe on the payroll. Within the first 2 episodes, there was a car that was following Yancey, and they tried to take him out on one occasion. They probably know the type of detective that Yancey was, one that seems to care and wants to fight for justice, so they knew that he probably wouldn't let it drop, hence the reassignment, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be something that's going to be stopping him. With bone shards and blood being found in Eve's home in the shower towards the end of the episode, this probably implies that Nick could have been killed before he even went out to sea. Maybe Christopher and Eve cut up the body before taking it out on the boat and were hoping that the remains would be lost forever. But obviously, that wasn't the case at all. Or the DNA may end up not matching Nick's, which will then show Yancey that there's a far larger criminal operation that's going on in Miami. My review of the episode. I thought the first 2 episodes of this show were pretty good. Apple TV doesn't really miss that much when it comes to their shows, and the production value, cast, and also stories tend to be at a good level. This is probably because, unlike the other streaming platforms, they're not putting out brand new shows what feels like every day of the week, so there's almost more intention behind what they release. I'm not the biggest comedy guy in the world, especially when it comes to TV series that try to have a serious story at their core, but I think this one gets the balance just about right. Would I prefer it if it wasn't a comedy and was a bit darker? Yeah, probably. But these 2 episodes didn't try to overdo it too much. I thought the concept of having 2 different stories interlocking was a nice touch, but I feel with them already colliding at the end of episode 2, I think it was a bit premature. I feel it would have been better to have had it unintentionally happen maybe a bit later on in the series to allow more time to question about how they could be connected. Vince Vaughn as Andrew Yancey is a strong performance, to be fair. It's hard not to see Vince Vaughn when you look at him when he's playing a character, but I think the role that he's playing is convincing. The conflict that he had in his mind over doing the right thing and not being able to shake the case, and also the kind-hearted nature that he has, is something that's relatable, and it's always good for that to be the case in shows like this. Something that's good about these first 2 episodes is that both stories, whether it be in the Florida Keys or the Bahamas, they're both interesting to follow, and when we cut from one to the other, the pacing isn't compromised and the quality of the story isn't either, so it allows us to stay engaged throughout the most part. I also kind of like the use of the captain as a narrator. It provides a little extra clarity and it works quite well within this show. In terms of the runtime, I felt like the first episode did just feel a tad too long. It was almost an hour, whereas episode 2 was around the 45-minute mark, and I feel as though that flowed a lot more easily when compared to the first episode, so I'm hoping that the rest of the episodes are going to be more in line with that. The mystery around what happened to Nick and why he was killed is the question that's at the forefront of the show. We know that Christopher and Eve were definitely involved in it, and it seems like the $5 million life insurance policy was one of the biggest reasons. So the reveal has kind of already happened in the early part of the show, so part of me thinks that there's going to be a dark edge and more sinister findings that we're going to be introduced to as the story develops. Bad Monkey has me hooked for now, and I'm willing to give this show a few episodes to really see what it's capable of. However, like the first episode feeling a bit too long, this show is going on until October. It has 10 episodes, so I'm hoping it doesn't become repetitive and end up becoming a victim of a show that probably could have shaved a few episodes off of it. I guess we'll see with that. So, there you have it. Bad Monkey episodes 1 and 2, ending explained. If you want to see your favourite shows broken down, then click on the card in the top corner, or alternatively, you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. I'm going to be covering this show every week, so be sure to come back to the channel to see the breakdowns. And finally, if you'd like to see what I rate the latest movies that don't quite make the cut to getting a dedicated video, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. What did you think of the first 2 episodes? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, thanks for tuning into the video, and I'll see you in the next one.